Well, I'm here to talk today about how the guitar links me to my universe. I understand that energy can neither be created or destroyed. It can change forms, and my personal universe extends from the here and now in my mind to the greatest extent of the galaxies, as far as my imagination can go. My universe is something, I kind of compare it to a Rube Goldberg apparatus. Now, you might not have heard of a Rube Goldberg apparatus before, but it's one of those devices where, somebody touches a lever, a ball falls, it hits a bunch of dominoes, the dominoes cross the room, and it all winds up in a coffee being poured in the next room. It's a over-engineered device, and my life is kind of like that. Anyways, the guitar has been a recurring domino in the Rube Goldberg device of my life. My first guitar lesson was with a man named Bill Shepherd in Ottawa, Ontario. I went to Bill's place. My parents paid $2 so that I could get this guitar lesson. Me and my friends and I, wanted to sound like the Beatles. So for $2, Bill taught us this. You might recognize that. She Loves You, written in 1963 by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Or it was released in 1963, I should say. Now, the interesting thing about that is that song was released 50 years ago from now. Consider this. That song, when it was released, was popular. It was played on the Ed Sullivan Show. It was sent on radio stations all over the world. Now, there is a planet called Gliese 163c that is approximately 50 light years away from Earth. They say it might be inhabitable, maybe only just by microbes, but still it might be inhabitable. And if the microbe people are listening to their radios, they might be listening to She Loves You by the Beatles. Wouldn't that be exciting? Because they say that all these huge discs that we have, dishes listening in space for signs of life, they're listening for music. They're not listening for repetitive things or white noise. They're listening for music or speech, but really, who's going to understand what anyone's saying? So 50 light years later, I'm still trying to learn how to play the guitar. The process of creating music and playing the guitar starts with a mysterious energy deep in the folds of the gray matter of your brain. These very weak electrochemical charges go bouncing around in your brain. They turn into thoughts, potential actions, concepts, or dreams. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist and I'm not an electronics expert, but I'm told that our brain can generate between 10 and 100 millivolts of electricity, compared to a television set which requires 25,000 volts to make a picture. Now, back to the tiny brain signals. These tiny signals are processed and sent down the spinal column, into the arms, to the hands, and into the fingers. They are then translated into a coordinated series of physical movements. Something like that, you hope. One hand presses his fingers onto the fingerboard, the other hand either strums or picks. This causes the strings to vibrate. These vibrations are translated by the box of the guitar, or in this case, a little bit by an amplifier, into sound. These sound waves are picked up by the eardrums and sent back to the brain. The brain says, I hear guitar music, and it sounds good. In the case of John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the music they made was encoded, written, put onto records, put on radio stations, and is still going through the universe. These songs are enjoyed by millions of people and will be for a long time. Now, I think playing the guitar and making music is very important to all humanity because we humans like to communicate with one another. In fact, we like to communicate with anybody or anything that will listen to us. Of course, any artistic tool in the artist's hands connects him to the universe, him or her to the universe, I should say. It could be your paintbrush, your cello. It could be a chisel. It could be even a chainsaw. But the guitar works best for me. Talking about the guitar today. Now, the guitar as an instrument is a beautiful mixture of engineering and alchemy. The basic idea is a few flexible steel or nylon strings under tension stretched over a sound box. The guitar mainly consists of wood, glue, and metal hardware. There are many factors in the engineering of a guitar. There are tuning gears, there are frets, all that serve to shorten or tighten the strings to change the pitch or pitch of the guitar. The tension of the strings must be equal to the strength of the neck, otherwise the guitar will pull itself apart or else just be too loose and won't sound good. That's the kind of thing. But one of the things that I'm interested in, and is not well understood, is the alchemy, magic, or mojo of a guitar. I like the feel and sound of a fine vintage instrument. For instance, this one here. This guitar in my hands is a 1952 Gibson ES-295. It's very similar to the guitar that Scotty Moore used, making his early Elvis music. So it's kind of historic in that way. Now, it has an extra thing that Scotty Moore I don't think had, which is a whammy bar, which I think is kind of cool. When I open the case of this guitar, I get a warm, fuzzy feeling. It just makes me feel nice. And it kind of makes me think that it's probably something like what an ancient miserly king would think of when he opened his treasure chest full of gold. That's how I feel. Now, the guitar is what makes a guitar valuable. Fine materials, skill, love, and care when it was made. Another thing that might make a guitar valuable is who played it before. Now, who played it before can be important, or it's a personal thing even. For instance, if your grandma gave you a guitar for Christmas, then you're thinking, it's valuable to you. You might never play it, but you might never part with it either. Now, if you don't believe me about this mojo or magic, it sounds like about hocus pocus, but somebody paid $2 million for a Fender Stratocaster a few years back. Why? Why would they spend $2 million for a Stratocaster? You can go and buy a nice Fender Stratocaster with no blemishes, no marks on it, for under $2,000. And it'll probably sound as good as the $2 million one. Why buy it? Well, the reason why is because the $2 million Stratocaster was played by Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. So that guitar has $2 million worth of mojo. Now, a while back, I saw a very funny cartoon by Gary Larson. Their caption was, "Wanted, good Nintendo player, $75,000 a year." And that really spoke to me, because I sort of consider myself to be like the Johnny Appleseed of guitars. I like to see a guitar in people's hands. I don't know why, but I do. And I got thinking, why do people play video games when they can play the guitar? They have the same, you need the same skills. You need hand-to-eye coordination. You need determination. You need nerves of steel. You need ability to concentrate in a Zen way. Why? Well, unlike the Far Side cartoon, there's a lot of money to be made playing the guitar. In fact, over the last 40 years, I have made hundreds of dollars. Hundreds. To the young people, I say, you know, your time is better spent playing the guitar than watching TV for endless hours. I know this because when I was a young lad, between Gilligan's Island and the Beverly Hillbillies, I used to practice. Finally, I perfected 3 chords, A, D, and E. I ran into the kitchen and I said to my mother, I said, "Ma, I can talk with this thing." Now, the thing about the guitar and practicing is if it doesn't sound good, you can do it again until it does. And when it does, you can sit there and savor the notes that you just made. And I think that's the Zen part of it. In this way, a guitar is kind of like a biofeedback machine. You know, these fancy machines, they hook up to you and you can change your brain waves, you know. Well, a guitar is a biofeedback machine because you hear what you've done immediately and you can correct it and change it. Sometimes a guitar can direct you to play things. That's maybe part of the mojo of a guitar, in that it can tell you things. The other day I picked up a flamenco style guitar and I decided I was going to try out some heavy metal. Anyways, it didn't sound good. It didn't sound right. And I realized that the guitar was telling me it didn't want to play heavy metal that day. It wanted me to play Spanish. It wanted me to play Spanish music that day. The other day, I recall hearing a CBC interview with Arlo Guthrie. He went on with the interview, and the interviewer handed him a guitar and said, "Will you play us a song?" And Arlo said, "Yes." And he said, what song will you play us?" And Arlo said, "I can't yet. I have to hold this guitar and see what it wants me to play." And I think that's very, very true. Now, I'd like to show you some things a guitar can do. Sometimes I tell people to, when you first pick up a guitar, make one beautiful note and savor it. You can even, it's kind of a beautiful thing. Then you can link notes to make melodies. And then you can put chords in. Notes can become chords, or a hot lick. So you can combine all these things, and once you play a chord, it's like having a barbershop quartet in the palm of your hands, because you can put any notes you want and combine them all together and make something beautiful. And I said, if you can play the A, D, and E chords, you can play the most popular songs ever written. Maybe people think a guitar is kind of an intimidating thing, but really you can. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, 3-chord wonder. A 3-chord wonder is a guy who can only play 3 chords, but he can play a lot of songs. And he can be very entertaining around a campfire. You know, you might have heard these 3 chords in a lot of contexts, like Louie Louie or La Bamba, you know, like. That's like, those are the 3 chords. That's just some examples of what you can play with those 3 chords. Now, a guitar can provide rhythm. Rhythm is one of the most important parts of music. In fact, music probably started with people pounding on a hollow log. And I think a guitar is basically a high-tech hollow log with strings. Now, if you have a little bit of skill, a little bit of rhythm, a little bit of luck, you'll be able to find something called the groove. Now, the groove is a natural high that you can get when everything falls into place. I've heard that surfers can get the groove when the huge wave is about to crash over them and they're in something called the tunnel. Or an NHL hockey player could get the groove when he just scores a final goal in an NHL playoff game. The guitar can also mimic things, like, for instance, the train. Kind of reminds you of a train a little bit. Now, when you put the notes, chords, rhythms, and songs together, they can lead to all sorts of things. They can lead to bands. It can lead into dancing. It can lead into campfires. It can lead into record deals, marriage, a lot of things. And besides, if you're wanting to go out and meet that special person, saying, hey, let's jam, let's do some guitar playing. It works a lot better than, what's your sign? Now, there was a time a few years ago, I was in Tulum, Mexico. I was sitting on the beach underneath a palm tree, just practicing my guitar quietly by myself. A young woman came up to me and she said, can you play any Elvis? And I did my best to play All Shook Up for her. Well, the next thing you know, there was a whole bunch of people on the beach in front of me, singing and dancing. It was like one of those cheesy Elvis movies, and I was Elvis. So, on another occasion, my son and I were playing at a little wedding party in the garden. There was people, a family was there, a fairly large family, and there was an older couple who were there, and they knew all the words. And they were making requests. They knew the words to all the old Hank Williams songs. They were making requests and singing along all afternoon. It was just a nice time. The next day, the family called us up and said they were really shocked and thrilled because this old couple had Alzheimer's and had not been lucid for a year. They were really glad to have them actually present mentally at their party. Now, I must say the guitar has also been important to me in my own family. I met my wife indirectly because of playing the guitar. I played the guitar for my children when they were little. And in fact, right now, I still have a little family band that I really enjoy playing guitar with. So it's a real medium for connecting. I also could use the guitar as kind of a meditative thing. You know, sometimes if you're sad or something, you can just kind of sit down and see where the guitar takes you. It can also be used to express emotion. Just a minor chord can be serious and sad. Or it can be happy. You can be happy playing the guitar. You can do all these things. And the guitar wound up being used for all sorts of much more profound things. For instance, in the example of blues music. Blues music that many people have used to ease their pain, to get past things, to express their dissatisfaction. I mean, all you have to do is look up on the internet blues. You can hardly even go into a club in town without listening to some elements of the blues. I like a B.B. King line, I gave her 7 children and now she wants to give them all back. That's saying something with humor, but actually it's probably a serious situation. It can be nice in an ethereal way to listen and play guitar. You know? Actually, that wasn't probably very soothing for you. But anyways, it makes me think of Ravi Shankar. Now you say, Ravi Shankar is not a guitar player. He played a sitar. Well, isn't that just a guitar that you sit down to play, kind of? But in fact, shortly after Ravi Shankar started becoming really popular, the Dan Electro Company started to make a sitar guitar. And it was used on all sorts of hit songs, like, for instance, Hooked on a Feeling by B.J. Thomas. You can hear that guitar. The guitar has been a staple in gospel music and spiritual music. For instance, if you listen to Sister Rosetta Tharpe. The guitar has also encouraged political change. Pete Seeger, for instance. If you listen to Pete Seeger or Woody Guthrie. One of my favorites is a song that was done by Country Joe and the Fish. It was called the Fixin' to Die Rag. I'm convinced you might be familiar with this song. Maybe you should look it up. I am convinced that it played a major role in ending the Vietnam War. Now, there are a few reasons, 6 reasons at least, why I am biased towards the guitar. They're convenient to carry. It's not like a piano. They come in many varieties, sizes and colors. You can use guitars for many musical styles, from, heavy metal to bossa nova. You can play many guitars in many ways: strumming, picking. There's so many ways to play a guitar. You can pound them. I'm not going to do that to this old darling. Jimi Hendrix even set his guitar on fire. Now, is that playing a guitar? I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to see what it sounded like when it burned. Don't try that at home, folks. You don't need to be an expert to enjoy playing. All you need to do is know those 3 chords, A, D, and E. You can have a lot of fun, so you don't need to be an expert. Guitars are inexpensive and accessible. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have a few of my songs played on the radio. And it's comforting for me to know that these songs are right now going through outer space and will be doing so long after I'm gone. So that's kind of nice. It's kind of like immortality. In fact, my interest in the guitar has led me to this stage right now. And it has linked all of you people into my universe. And for me, that is a great honor. And I want to thank everybody for being here, and I want to thank all the volunteers and everybody who allowed me to connect to your universe. Thank you very much.